Welcome to Qt Widgets and More. A few episodes back I showed you KD algorithms, my approach at an algorithm wrapper, and hopefully you like that and hopefully you want to use it. And if so, the question begs, how will you actually get it into your code base? One answer to that is Git submodules, and in this episode I'll show you how to set that up. Git submodules is a very useful tool, but it's also sometimes slightly annoying. It gives you weird error messages, especially when you jump around between different revisions. And how do you set it up? I'll show you all of this in this and the next episode, where I'll show you the interaction with Git submodules. I'll do that by typing in no less than more than 100 commands on my command line, so you can follow exactly how it looks like. And trust me, you by now know these thinkers are not very useful for typing in stuff on the command line while I record. So I create a very, very simple bash script that will allow me to just pre-cook these commands. You can look at that bash script yourself to see how I did it, but more importantly, to cut and paste the commands so you don't need to write them down from the screen here. Let's get started. What you can see here is there's a title up here saying, first of all, let's get a clean working directory. Over here you can see the command number. You can see the directory I'm in relative to where I want to be, and the command that I'm going to execute. I haven't executed it right now, but now I've just executed rm-rf temp git playground. I'll create that directory. I will cd into that directory, and you can see the shell or the path over here changed. So everything is relative to that because it's relative to that that's interesting. I want to show you enormous amount of Git commands, and the most useful way of doing that, if you want to play with Git yourself, is to simply create a new repository. So I'm creating one here, git init --bare. That's one where there isn't anything checked out into, and I call it myapplication.git. It will spit out some command, so some arguments, some messages to me here in standard output, and you can see that typed in there. I created that command now, or that git module now. So the next thing is, as the title here says, clone this one. So I'm cloning it here into my application. So git clone myapplication.git into my application, and I got an empty checkout there. Let's cd into that directory. And now I'll copy over a file just so we have something to work with here. And the file that is copied over just looks like this. Let's run this cmake-project that you can find in GitHub here. It's a similar to qmake- project that very useful. Just generate you a simple setup. cmake-project -q, meaning which Qt version. And no, I don't need any Qt in this very simple one. I get a very simple cmake set up here from that. Let's set up a git ignore too, so that we can actually see stuff with git status and so on in the rest of this script here. I've added that, and I add my main.cpp, my cmake.txt, and my .github. And it's time to commit it. So now it's committed, as you can see here. I've committed it. Let's create a build of this. So I create a build directory, I cd into it. I run cmake on ... which will configure cmake for this. Everything's cool. I can compile. And if you remember from above, all it did was to print out hello world as we see it here. Okay, cool. Now it's time for us to add Git submodules. The way that I do that is that I cd again out of this directory here. I will create myself. I'm in the root of my current directory here. I'll call git submodule add, and then the path for whatever I want to check out. And here is this is the path for the KD algorithms, but it of course works on anything else. It will take a bit to clone this. Fortunately, KD algorithms isn't that big, so it was checked out really fast. Let's see what's in this subdirectory, what we got out there. Yeah, that looks exactly like my files. Let's run a git status. It tells me that I now have a new file that is called git modules, and this is how Git submodules are actually done. And I got another file called KD algorithms. Wasn't that a directory? Oh well, let's call this a command here, git config -- global. It's for you to cut and paste out of here. And what it does is that when I call git status, it will give me, instead of saying, hey, there's a file here, it will tell me, well, it's a submodule that has changed. There's 47 commits from this version 0.0.0, which means you don't have it, up onto the current version. And the most recent one is this one that we have here. Okay, let's look at this git modules file, what it looks like. And it's a simple ini file that tells you that we have a submodule called KD algorithm. The path for that one is into KD algorithm, and the URL that it came from was this URL here. Let's copy over a new main.cpp just so we can see submodules actually working here. This one is now using the KD algorithms.h, and what it does is that I'm creating a vector here, I'm sorting the vector, I'm printing out the vector, and the key thing here is, of course, KD algorithms : sort, which is, well, it comes from KD algorithms. Let's also copy over a CMake list.txt file, and it has changed slightly from what you saw above. Most noticeable, well, that's really the only change, is that I now call add subdirectory KD algorithms, and from the way that the KD algorithms /cmake.txt file is set up, it specifies there is an interface here, and that interface is KD algorithms. So I'm just saying target link library KD algorithms into my application. That means compile that one into my application too. Go to build, run CMake, run make, and now run my application. As you can see, my 312 is now sorted into 123. We'll do a few things before we continue on. We will commit our stuff, and then let's see what will happen. So I go one level up, I'll add my CMake and my CMake list text and my main.cpp file. I will run git commit. I will push it. Remember, I was in a checkout called my application, but the server version, or the simulated server version, was called my application.git, and that one now have my changes. So far, so good. It almost was like, why do you need a Qt widgets and more episode on that? That was just like, you just paste it somewhere. That's the command to execute to get the submodule out. And you're entirely right. But the problem comes when you're actually working with submodules, when you check them out. And in the next episode, I'm going to show you way more problems, namely when multiple people are working with submodules. But just here now, let's assume that the submodule is never ever going to change again, which is definitely not true for KD algorithms, but let's just assume that. But nevertheless, I have just added a submodule to my project. Somebody else comes around and check out the project, and lots of problems will start. As I said, we've checked in the submodule. Let's go and check the whole project out anew. So we'll go one level up. We'll nuke the whole project and we'll clone it afresh. So now I have a completely new checkout. I'll go into that one. I'll create my build directory. I'll cd into my build directory. I will run CMake out. And that's where the trouble that I was talking about starts. You can see stuff in red, right? It says CMake error, CMake.txt, line 8. That's the line that says add subdirectory KD algorithms. The source directory, that's the KD algorithm subdirectory. This one, yeah, that's what I'm saying, does not contain a CMake text. What? Why is there no such thing in there? Let's go and check it out. Up one level, look in the submodules, 0 files. So what happened was that when I cloned my project from my project.git, all I got out was the project itself, not the submodule. So what I need to do now is need to run git submodule update. That will update that submodule. I could specify just the module name, but in this situation, I likely want to update all my submodules had I had multiple of them. I also need to run git submodule init, I believe it's called, And just in case that the submodule, one day I'm sure that KD algorithm will find a way to be using some other submodule. So to avoid that we get in the same problem at the next level, what I'll do is I'll specify these two parameters. Minus minus recursive means go into KD algorithms and also do submodule update in there in case that it had submodules itself. And also minus minus init, run init on or git submodule init while you're doing this. And now I got my submodule out. If we look in the directory, you can see, yes, now I got stuff in this directory again. CD build, CMake, oh, now it worked. Make, absolutely fantastic. Run my application and my 3 numbers are sorted again. There is a solution to this problem. And solution is to use a bit of CMake magic. So let's go out again, nuke the whole directory once again, clone the directory once again, CD into it, and this time I'll not just go in and build. What I'll do is that I'll copy over a file here. So I'll create a CMake subdirectory. I'll copy over this file. And what this file looks like, if we just have a short look at the file here, it's a CMake function called check submodule exists. It takes a name, that's a name that I'll print out, and a path. And if blah, 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 current source directory. So if in the root of my source directory, if there is a .git file and there is not a .git in this path specified, then I will print out this error message. And the first part, the first if, well, that's just if you clone this off and you export it and you delete all Git references, and it will still have that in the CMake file and should of course still work. So if you do not have a Git, then there's no problem. But if you have a Git up there and you do not have a .git down there, that's simply because you forgot to initialize your submodule. And the nice error message here says, please run the following command in the source directory, which is this directory here by the way, git submodule update minus minus init minus minus recursive. And the git submodule update minus minus init minus minus recursive is exactly what you saw me run just before. It could of course have said, please run the following blah 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 blah, git submodule update minus minus init minus minus recursive, and the name of this module here. But then it would only update that. And if I had 10 of those, I would get 10 error messages before I was done. So rather update them all in one go. Okay, I got that over. I also need a new CMake list.txt file over. And what this one looks like is that it includes this check submodule. Well, actually, first it set up the CMake module path to be this CMake file here. Of course, I could just have taken these few lines of code here and pasted them into my CMake file. But at least in my experience, CMake files tend to be enormously long and very complex. So this is a mechanism for taking these lines and put them into another file, and then include this check submodule exists. That's a file name that we copied over into my CMake directory here. And then check submodule exists, KD algorithms, that's the name, and this is the directory. And if I do that, make the build, cd build, cmake ... and now I got red again, but this time the red says, please run the following command in this directory, blah, blah, blah. And that is easy to do now. So I could do that. Okay, you might already have seen this from the blue line below. There is an alternative, namely specifying minus minus submodule minus recurse, which would then recurse into the submodules. But I'll still have that other code in there. And trust me, in the first few weeks, month, until we got that check into my own code base, people would check out and they would say, why did anybody forgot to add something there? With that message in there, it's so much easier. People will notice, oh, it's a submodule. Otherwise, all they get is that, hey, there is nothing checked out here. But let's have a look at what does the minus minus recurse option look like. So again, I go one level up, I nuke my directory, and this time I'll run clone using the minus minus recurse submodule. I even specify minus J8, which tells us, hey, you can go and clone off 8 submodules in parallel. And with just one submodule, that's not much of a gain, but hey, it's there. And as it says here, time for an alias. Well, here's one alias, git config global alias .cln, that gives me an alias for that's called git.cln that does the clone minus recurse minus J8. But trust me, I've had that alias for a couple of months now, and I always forget myself to run git.cln. I always just run git clone. So the alternative is to add this alias here called fix submodules that does the submodule update minus recurse minus init. And with that one in there, well, then whenever you forget to use the CLN, you can just run the git fix submodules and it will work again. I'll cd into the directory, I'll make dir cd and build, and we'll run it, and lo and behold, 1, 2, and 3 got sorted into this once again. And the final one here is game over player 1. That's it for this week's episode of Git Widgets and More. In next week's episode, I'll continue on the submodule subject of submodule. We will see what happens. Multiple people start working on it. You have a checkout, somebody adds something to the submodule. How do you get that? And well, there is ample amount of confusion and problems in there. So stay tuned for next week. And until then, have a great time.